Hi, Pastor Jerry here, and today we're going to continue our video series on pro-life arguments. As I already said in my previous video, this is really taking a sermon that I preached recently and dividing up into four parts that give you the four arguments for the pro-life argument. A little expanding on it, a little exposition as we go along. Last time we talked about the biblical arguments. This time we're going to move along. We already mentioned how we're going to talk about the biblical arguments, which was last time, philosophical arguments, biological arguments, and constitutional arguments. All of these are good arguments, and I intend to show how each one of these are good evidence for why the pro-life position is the correct position, and the pro-choice or the pro-abortion position is the wrong position to take. But last time we talked about the biblical arguments. This time we're going to talk about the philosophical arguments. This is the philosophical reasoning why I believe my position is correct. So, American philosophy is just basically reasoning and giving an argument for why, from a philosophical or reason point of view, why your view is correct. And so we're going to talk about, first of all, the first thing I want to talk about is, should Christians be involved in politics? And this is an important philosophical argument because there's some Christians who say, no, Christians should not be involved in politics. In fact, we need to keep the separation of church and state. We need to do that, and therefore Christians should never be involved in politics. We should just get out of it. And first of all, let me first say this. The idea of separation of church and state is nowhere found in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, or any of our founding documents. It is from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a Baptist church, and he was writing this, and he wrote this sentence to say, don't worry, the federal government will not impose its will upon the church. It was not about where the church could not influence government. In fact, most of the founding states all had religious elements in their constitutions because they saw the value of the Christian faith. It was very much a nation birthed in Judeo-Christian values, and it was not absent of it. In fact, it was there. The only thing the founders were concerned about is having a state church. So having a Church of England or having a Catholic church that was the state religion. But they had no problem with the fact of having the values from those religious groups being in government. They had no problem with the values of the Christian religion. They just didn't want a state-sponsored one religion. So they had no problem as long as the Presbyterians or the Baptists or the Episcopals or the Anglicans or any religious, as long as they all have equal voice, there's nothing in government that says that they can't speak into politics. In fact, it's actually encouraged. And throughout the founding documents is the idea that if you look at the history of the United States, it is often been said it is a very religious people, and is very and that religion is key because if we're going to have freedoms, we need to have a moral foundation. So Christians have been involved in politics, and politics has encouraged that. But I need to get back to the philosophical argument, and the first one would be all laws are about legislating morality. And let me say this: the problem a lot of people say is why Christians shouldn't be involved in politics is, oh, you shouldn't be impose your values on other people. The problem with that idea is all laws are morality. Where we're talking about Christian morality or any other religious morality or secular morality or anything that says this is right and this is wrong is a moral issue. And so all laws are morality, and we legislate laws of morality all the time. When we say do not murder, that's a moral issue. When we say do not steal, that's a moral issue. By the way, Christianity agrees with don't murder and don't steal, and no one has a problem with Christians saying, yeah, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't murder. But it's when we say some some area that's not popular, like we think that gay marriages should not be legal, and we believe that abortion should not be legal. That's when they say, "Oh, you can't impose your values on us." But obviously, there's some areas that don't mind. So all things are moral values. All laws have moral values, and so uh, we need to understand laws communicate morality. In fact, when the Supreme Court passes something, it tells the United States what they consider moral. And so that morality is throughout all of government. So all laws are morality. Second, all people should have the right to have a say in legislation of what they think is moral. And this is true. We want as many people have influence because if we only allow a certain group to define it, then that's what they end up with tyranny. That's how you end up with despotisms and uh, um, people opposing the will of others. No, and the way we set up our government, we want as many people to explain the moral thing. Everyone should have that right to say what they think is right or wrong, make their argument, make their case. This is important. We want people involved because the best way to help us determine what's right and wrong is for us to argue, and everyone have the right to have a say what they think is moral or not moral, and we'll see how it plays out. Therefore, and this is okay, if all laws are moral, and everyone should have a say, therefore, and Christians have a view of morality. Christians do have a view of morality, and therefore they should be heard. And the laws are about morality, so Christians are going to share their understanding of morality. Therefore, Christians have a right to have a say in legislation of what is moral. Because laws are moral, because everyone should have a say, because Christians have a view of morality, therefore Christians should have a say what they think is moral. And so Christians should be allowed to have their input and what they say is right and wrong, and let the argument play out. And so everyone should have a voice on those things. So yes, Christians should be involved in politics, and yes, they should let their views be known in politics. And I would argue, biblically speaking, God would instruct us to do so, to as much bring the truth of God's word into our society, because we want to be a blessing to society, be encouragement to society, to help make the most godly, good nation as we can, and therefore we should be involved to help make it as much of a godly nation as possible, with also not infringing on the rights of others, and that's always a tightrope to play on. But this is important. So moving on, the next argument we want to give is a simple argument for the pro-life position. So the first is this. First premise: is wrong to take the life of an innocent human being without proper justification. Say it again. It is wrong to take the life of an innocent human life without proper justification, and therefore that's why we don't believe in murder. We don't believe in manslaughter. And there's such a thing as called war crimes. There are stuff where if you kill an innocent human being without proper justification, it is wrong and often considered evil. And in fact, that's really with this whole Black Lives Matter and stuff is to argue about, was it a justified killing or was it not a justified killing? And depending on that, where you land on that will determine, was it wrong? If you don't think it was justified, and it's proven that was an unjust killing of innocent human life, then they're right. It was wrong. But if the person was not innocent and you can justify it, then it wasn't wrong. And so the question is it justifiable, and was it an innocent human life? That's the first premise. Second premise: abortion takes the life of an innocent human being without proper justification. So abortion is taking a life. All the scientists agree that there was a life there. What everyone considered, it was alive, and it was alive, and now it is being killed. And it was a human life that's being killed. And there is no proper justification. If that's the case, therefore abortion is wrong. Right? And in fact, not only is it wrong, but I believe it is actually murder. It is, or if you want to say manslaughter, either way, but it is wrong. It's wrong. Now, people have no problem with the first premise. It's the second premise. They say, well, is it really innocent human life? And is there a proper justification? That's where the question, that's where the argument is. So, let's consider that. And by the way, I need to give due credit. This argument here that I just put down, this put together by Greg Kokel from Stand the Reason. I think it was a great argument. So I want to at least give credit for that. This next argument, which is called the sled argument, near me, no Greg Kokel, who know exactly who came up with this, but whoever came up with this was a brilliant way of explaining this. So whoever came with this, kudos to you. So first is size. Now the people of the pro-life argument will give 4 reasons why they think abortion is okay. They say the fetus is small. They'll say the level of development is too small. The environment, they're inside the mother's womb, and the degree of dependency. These are the 4 arguments they'll say this is why abortion is okay. So we want to look at each 4 of these things and prove that it's not a good argument. So let's go back. We'll go to size. The first one is size. Now size, they'll say, well, it's really small, and therefore it does not have a value as a born child because it's so small and quite low. I mean, there is a stage when the fetus development where, I mean, it's microscopic, and then sometimes it's about that big. I mean, and they say, well, if it's that small, then it doesn't really have value. The problem is that we do not determine value of a human life by size. I'll give you an example. Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Most people know who these 2 people are. Arnold Schwarzenegger, really big guy. Danny DeVito, really small guy. Does Arnold Schwarzenegger have more value because he's bigger over Danny DeVito, who's very much smaller? No. Both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito have equal value because they're still both human beings. The size does not determine value. If we did that, then we could say that if you're taller, you have more value, but if you're really short, if you're a 2-year-old boy, you have less value than a woman, adult woman. But that's not true. We do not determine value by size. That's a horrible metric. And so the fact that the fetus is very small does not take away its value. Level of development. So let's mention this. I mentioned just a moment ago, a woman. Is adult woman, say 25, does she have a higher level of development than a 5-year-old girl? Yes. Because the 5-year-old girl has not gone through puberty. She hasn't fully developed biologically. She can't have children yet. She hasn't developed breasts yet. Her brain isn't fully developed yet. And there's all sorts of things that are not fully developed. Bone density and all that, that's still not fully developed yet. Full muscle tissue isn't fully developed. And so adult woman who does have fully functioning reproductive organs, who does have a fully developed breast, has fully developed muscles and bone tissues and everything, she is far more developed than the 5-year-old girl. But does a 25-year-old woman, because she's more developed, have more value than a 5-year-old girl? No. The same is true for that fetus. Yes, is it less developed? Yes. Does it have a long way to go? Absolutely. But just because it's not as developed as a newborn child does not give it less value. If a 5-year-old girl does not have any less value than a 25-year-old woman, then why does it matter to go back 9 months or 8 months or 6 months? Why does that make any difference of value? It doesn't. The level of development does not affect the value. We do not determine things that way. The next one is environment. I'm in the building right now. There's some people on the beach somewhere. Um, and they're having fun on the beach somewhere, and I'm in this building. Do the people on the beach who are having fun, do they have more value than I do because I'm in a building in Maine? No. Well, just because I'm inside and they're outside doesn't affect value. Some people are in a mansion somewhere in Hollywood somewhere. Do they have more value than me because I'm in a small church in Maine and they're in this giant mansion? Well, no. So environment does not determine value. And this the birth canal, this small birth canal that you go through, there's nothing magical that happens between the womb and being born. Nothing magical happens as you go through this birth canal, this few inches, that all of a sudden, aha, now you have value. No, that's not how we determine value. There is no magic between inside the womb or outside the womb. That child still has value. So environment is not where I want to find value. The next one is a degree of dependency. The degree of dependency, we also do is argument to say, oh, the fetus is dependent on the mom and therefore cannot feed on itself and therefore it has less value. Now here's the problem with that argument. That newborn baby is still fully dependent on the mom to provide food, shelter, clothing, clean it up. The degree of dependency of an unborn child and a born child is exactly the same. It has not changed. Therefore, the value is the same. But so that's one reason. The dependency didn't change inside the womb or outside the womb. Really. If you do not feed that child, if you do not shelter it, if you do not change its diapers, if you're not taking care of that baby, the baby will die. Right? So the baby is still dependent fully on the mother to provide for it. Inside that womb, outside womb, still level. So that takes care of it right away. But even that, people who have certain disabilities, mental disabilities, autism, or physical disabilities, are they more dependent than the people who are born without those disabilities? Yes, they're more dependent. Do they have less value? No. We would not say an autistic person has less value than a non-autistic person. We would not say someone who has a physical disability to have less value than a person who doesn't have that. We wouldn't say a person who is 9-year-old who is in the nursing home who needs someone to provide for them to have less value than a 25-year-old. No. The degree of dependency is not simply used to determine value. Now, let me say this. These are arguments that I've heard from pro-choicers, pro-abortioners, for why human beings don't have value. Why the unborn don't have value. And as we see, none of those are good arguments. All of them are bad arguments and should not be even considered as a good argument to even be considered. So we need to understand that. Another thing that we need to understand is this, and I forgot to put this on the slide, so I'll just tell you that a lot of people say, well, what about rape and incest? And let me first say, that is terrible, it's horrible, it's a tragedy when that happens. Let me first say that. And that person and that woman or that girl or whatever the age may be who has gone through that needs to be loved and taken care of and helped desperately. However, they make about 1% or less of those who get abortions. Most people do not get abortions because of incest or rape. That's very, very small. And we do not create laws based on 1%, less than 1%. We don't base laws on the exception. We base laws on the normal thing. And actually, recently, it's not even teenagers that are getting abortions now. Not to say it doesn't happen, but they're not the primary ones. The primary ones are those in their 20s who are getting abortions, who are being indisciplined with their sexual lifestyle. And if they were disciplined, at least using birth control or something, at least be disciplined, they wouldn't be having abortions. And because they're being indisciplined with it, that's why they end up in those situations. It is not because of rape, it is not for incest, except for that one small 1%. And let me say the ones who do have that happen, I'm sorry, it's unfortunate. But just because someone has done a wrong to you, has done something evil to you, which by full meaning is true, it does not give you the right to take the life of an unborn child that has done absolutely nothing wrong. That child is innocent and has not been harmed and as much as a victim as the raped woman is. And therefore, there's no justification for killing that innocent human life because that child is an innocent. And that's a human being. And let me say, the women who are in those situations, someone needs to come alongside them and say, we will walk with you through this. And if you want to give up this child for adoption, we'll make sure we get that. If you want to raise this child and you need some support, we'll help you. Just do not commit. Just don't get an abortion. We'll help you through this. Just don't do it. And that's covers that other thing. The other thing I guess I have to address it. I did again mention this in my sermon. I need to address this because some people ask me, well, what about when the woman's life is in danger? And I want to be clear, is not that that the woman won't have a full productive life. We're not talking about that. This is a point where a woman's life may be in danger, and if she doesn't get the abortion, that she might die. Again, very rare situation. But almost everyone I know would say, if the mother's life is in danger, that she might die unless she gets an abortion. That's one of the few exceptions that most people are okay with. And part of the reason is the mother's life. We know we can save the mother's life, then that's a known thing. Until the child is born, it is unknown where that child will live all the way. Now, if you can save both, then you shouldn't get the abortion. But if it's between the mother's life and the child's life, then in that case, it's between the mother and the father to discuss it, what they would want to do. And there are some exceptions. I do know someone who doctors told his mom to get abortion. They didn't. And miraculously, the cancer went away. He was able to be born. And in fact, she was able to have several other kids afterwards. And it's just a miracle upon miracle. It's just amazing. Um, but at that point, that has to be up to the mother and the father. And that's one of the things that it should be made by a mother and father because that child is a product of both the mother and the father. There is no special onus because it's her body, right? Um, and by the way, just because it's your body doesn't mean you can do whatever with your body. There's some things you're not allowed to do, such as you're not allowed to commit suicide. That's actually a legal thing to do, and it's also illegal. It's wrong to drink or do drugs while you're pregnant because that affects the child. Um, there's just some things you cannot do. You can't just because it's your body doesn't mean you can just drive recklessly on the road or do dangerous things. Just because it's your body is not necessarily your choice. There's some things that are moralistically wrong, whether it's just your body or not. Okay? Um, so that covered a lot of these topics. I'm sure there's other philosophical arguments that we can talk about, but I wanted to at least hit these ones. So hopefully this gives you a good philosophical argument to base on and to develop. Again, I'm sure I'm not covering it all, but God bless you. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time as we talk about the next one, which is the biological argument. Okay, bye. If you like these videos, please like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. God bless you, and have a good day.